Okay, if you will prepare yourself by putting your hand over your eyes and just opening your eyes. I open my eyes to see the spiritual truth today. And then if you put your hand over your ears, I open my ears to hear the spiritual truth today. Now, will you just put your hand over your heart and extend out your arms? I open my heart to receive the spiritual truth today. The spiritual truth that I'm working with today is that we live in an unlimited universe. We live in a universe with no limits. There's plenty of eligible men, plenty of eligible women on the planet. However you want to choose from that mix-up, they're all there available for us. There are plenty of cars. There's plenty of Maseratis. There's plenty of Priuses. There's plenty of trucks. Whatever it is we want in that, we just get to choose. Plenty of all of that. Plenty of love. Just plenty of everything. That's easy. When we start looking at stuff that we may want but not need, that's easy to say we live in an unlimited universe. It gets tougher when we say we live in an unlimited universe and there are enough jobs for everybody. And that's not so easy to hear. If you're a person out there looking for a job every day, but we can't just have these spiritual principles working in our lives for the easy stuff and forget them when life gets hard. It's the very time we need to grab onto the understanding that we live in an unlimited universe. And there are plenty of jobs. Now, what's true is, in that moment, it may not be the job you want in the location you want it. It might not be convenient. In fact, it might be hard to find a job. It might be a job that is not in your field or that pays what you need to have it pay. But there are plenty of jobs in the universe. We look at our immigrant brothers and sisters, many of them who come from another place with degrees in science and medical degrees and professor degrees, and they're working as janitors because they need to have a job. And they know that it doesn't foretell what's to happen in the future. They hold on to that idea that they came here for freedom. And they know that we live in an unlimited universe. Knowing that is not so easy when it gets to the hard stuff. And it also, if we're not careful, it can give us an entitlement mentality that will not serve us. This notion that we live in an unlimited universe. God will always give us enough air to breathe. Always. But we have to be good stewards of the air that we get. Because if we continue to putrefy the air that we are getting and making it breathing hard, it's not on God, it's not on the universe, it's on us. We have to be good stewards of this unlimited supply. Asthma has risen 75% in children and adults since 1990. Living in an unlimited universe does not give us carte blanche to not be good stewards. God will always give us rain and snow, always. But if we continue to raise the temperature atmospherically and oceanically, and it dries up before it can get to our cup, it's on us. It's not on an unlimited universe. We need to hold on to these principles tightly, and we need to take very good care of the infinite supply that has been given to us on the planet. Well, I'm in a series right now of living in the flow, because that's what happens. When we live in the flow, We understand that we live in an unlimited universe, and we also understand that we have to take good care of this flow. I'm working on a series based on a book called In the Flow of Life by Eric Butterworth. Great, great metaphysician. And in it, he reminds us that there is a river of supply that is running through our lives right now with everything we could want or need in the river of supply. Those things that are good for us are running in the river of supply. Those things that would be better for us to leave untouched, bourbon is running in the river of supply. I don't need to touch that. See? But it's all there. Everything is in the river of supply. God will never give us a vision without giving us provisions. Ever. And if we keep that firm before us, we know that we live in an unlimited universe. But in order to keep our vision clear, we have to know what it is. We have to know what success means for us. He says a great thing about success. He says that we need to all take a minute and figure out what success is for us before we dip into the river of supply. Because unfortunately, we live in a culture in which success often means position and accumulations. It means accumulations and position. And maybe it does for you, and maybe it doesn't. See, every ladder has many rungs, and what happens because of the way the culture is set up, you and I reach the rung we've been looking for, and we're finally there, and then everybody says, but look, there's another rung. And so while we felt successful for a nanosecond, now we're searching for something we never wanted in the first place. Somebody else is telling us, look at that higher rung. You can go farther. When in truth, we were happy at the rung we were. We felt successful where we were. The worst part, the very worst part of not reaching the next rung is we feel like we're failures when we felt successful before somebody talked about the next rung. You know, one of the new spiritual practices I want to invite you to participate in, and I want you to make it as important as you make prayer, visioning, and meditation. I want you to make this new spiritual practice that I'm just making up right now, I want you to make it as important as those three. And that's to have a day, a year, in which you call your Success Recollection Day. And I want you to make it like your birthday is that important, or Jesus' birthday, that important. I want you to get a cake. I want you to call some friends over and say, today's my Success Recollection Day. Have some cake and talk about what that success was for you that year. You know, maybe it's so far your kids are thriving. Maybe so far your success is you went to work every single day and you did not kill the guy next to you who's been driving you nuts. Maybe that's your success in that year, and it's well worth a piece of cake that you have that happen. Or maybe it's that you went to the gym and you made a commitment to, take off a few pounds and tone up, and that's your success. Celebrate that success. Maybe that success is you quit debting and you looked at your debt and you began to pick it apart and see how you could manage it in a different way. That's a success. Maybe that success is that you went to recovery meetings even though you thought you knew everything they were going to say and you just didn't want to hear it one more time, but you went anyway. Maybe that was success. Whatever your success is, take time. Make it a spiritual practice, that you recognize it, that you feel it, that you celebrate that success that you are. And notice that most of your successes aren't going to have anything to do with position or accumulation. Now look, we want you to have whatever position you want in life. We want you to have promotions if that's what you want. We want you to have all the accumulations that you want, all the toys that you want. We'll help you. We'll help you, teach you spiritual principles to get those toys for you. We don't think that's bad. I'm going to Florida to work, by the way, to work. I'm going to Florida to work next week. And then Donna and I are taking another 5 days. And I plan on playing some of the premier golf courses in Florida. And I've been saving a long time for it. I'm telling you. I want to have those opportunities, and I want you to have those opportunities, to have all of the accumulations you want. But what we want to know is that if you're happy right now, be happy. Celebrate it. Don't let society tell you, oh, you better move up. Better move up. Need one more thing. Be happy right where you are right now. Success isn't getting stuff. It's getting into the flow of life, getting into the creative process, and really understanding it so you can replicate it in case the bottom falls out of the present success that you're in. There are people on this planet who have in their kitchens or in their garages, have developed great things. And they've started little startup businesses, and they've made lots of money. And then finally, the patent on the little thing that they made in their kitchen ran out, and somebody else looked at that thing and tweaked it a little better and made something else. And so the first guy's business just went kerplump. That guy doesn't worry. If he's in the flow of life, if he's in the creative process, he doesn't care because he knows or she knows they can do it again. They can make the next thing and do the next startup business. It's success isn't getting stuff. It's getting into the creative flow of life. To understand that we don't have to go out there to get success. That success starts right in here. Listen to what he says on page 61. Yes, God will supply every need if we open our minds in an enthusiastic desire to give. Ideas, plans, and forms will come easily and flow freely, putting words in our mouth, directing our hands, and moving our feet in the way we should go. All that is required is that we keep in the flow, keep an open mind and heart by positive thought and creative faith, and that we keep moving in the direction of our dreams, getting in the flow. Well, there are many chapters in this book. Last week we looked at the chapter of being in the flow as it relates to physical healing. Today we're going to look at 2 more chapters, and one of them is called the effusion of light. And he says this about light. He says, light is God inside of you. That's the definition of light. The definition of light is the reality that God is within you, that creativity is within you. In this church, we might say light is the understanding that divine wisdom is within you. You don't have to look out there. Divine wisdom is inside of you. Ernest Holmes would say there's nothing to heal, only more God to be revealed, only more divine wisdom to be revealed inside of ourselves. See, one of the things that he invites us to do in this book is to stop looking for evidence and advice for where we want to go next. Start looking inside of us. We don't need to call the posse and say, hey, what do you think I should do next? Because here's what happens. The people who love us most in the world, and you parents, you know this, people who love us most in the world want to protect us more than they want us to be successful. They want to protect us more than they want us to be successful. Think about when your kids get too close to the edge. Be careful. Step back. Because you want them safe. Children should fall down. Children should fall down, and so should grown-ups. And what happens is when we keep looking for advice all over the planet, we're not likely to fall down because people are protecting us from falling down. So what we want to do is to begin to stop looking out there, stop gathering evidence that we're right or we're wrong, and look inside, because divine wisdom has a voice for you. And when we can begin to understand that voice and listen to it. Now, there's one group of people in the church this morning that I want to talk to, because you and I have to be careful with this wisdom. Yes, we want to look within before we go outside of ourselves, always. But if you are new to recovery from alcohol or drugs or significant codependence, you want to first look within, but you want to find some person to bounce that off of before you go on. Make it be a practitioner, a sponsor, a wise friend, somebody who knows what they're doing. But you know, you and I, we have a little wax buildup in our ears. So it's harder for us to hear divine wisdom sometime in the way that it was meant to be. So we always want to check out ourselves. But like everybody else, we need to go within first and begin to develop a relationship with that. See? Whenever we're confused as to what we do, we look to, or we get a new idea, like this idea of going to divine wisdom before we go to advice, before we go to anybody else. Look to nature. Taoists are so smart. They say, look to nature. You know, birds know exactly when it's time to fly off. They know that. They don't have a committee meeting about it. They don't call their little bird friends somewhere else, say it's a time. They know there's an impulsive move inside of them that says, now it's time to go. And they listen to that and they go. And there's something about those birds that knows when it's time to come back, and not only when it's time to come back, but how to get back. They don't have a GPS, but they know it's time to come back and how to get there. Same thing with salmon. They leave a river and they go to the ocean, and they have to, when it's time to make whoopee and babies and all, they move back up that same river. And they know how to do that because there is a divine wisdom inside of it. And Jesus says, look, if I was going to do it to the birds and the fish, why wouldn't I do it to you? We have that. We have that same wisdom that is within us. Simply, we have to train ourselves. Johannes Brahms, the great composer, says this. He says, I always contemplate my oneness with the Creator before commencing to compose. I immediately feel vibrations that thrill my whole being. I love that. I immediately feel vibrations that thrill my whole being. When we are willing to listen, we will feel that thrill of our whole being before the composition of what our next step is. Well, the next chapter I want to talk about briefly is this. It's a chapter that says, called The Art of Getting Along. And getting along is hard. A lot of different factors as to, how we can get along. But if we are willing to live in the flow of life, if we're willing to understand that there is a flow of life, we can learn how to get along. The first thing we have to do is to learn how to get rest. Simple spiritual practice of getting rest. And I'm going to guarantee you, if you are not getting rest, life of getting along is much harder than it is if you're getting rest. And then he asks us in this book to ask ourselves two questions if we're not getting along. The first question is, are we in the flow? Are we ourselves in the flow? Never mind the person who's working our last nerve. Are we in the flow? Are we in a state of mind in which we like ourselves, in which we feel self-confident, in which we are dealing with life's tasks in a successful way? Are we in that state of flow? Because if we're not, there's no point in us working on the outer. We have to get ourselves first in the flow. And you all know that. You've all experienced it. You know, it was Valentine's last week. Think back to your first Valentine day with your first beloved. You were in the flow. Nobody worked your last nerve. I'm telling you, you didn't care. Somebody said something stupid to you. I'm in love. I don't care. You say it again. I don't care. You know? Sorry, somebody swipes your car. Oh, yeah, well, I'm in love. I'm in the flow here, That's our work. Our work is to look in the mirror and find that love for ourselves so that we can be in the flow of love. Because it's much harder for somebody to steal our serenity if we're in the flow. The second question he asks us to ask ourselves is, what's really going on here? We're such a reactive bunch. Somebody says something and we react. And what he asks us to do is to look on life as Buddhists look on life, which is to become an observer of life and look at that situation from a higher place, from an observant place, and see if we can't find out what's really going on there. And then we're also invited to look at our Toltec ancestors and be reminded not to take anything personally, because it really doesn't have any effect on us. I mean, it's not about us. If we can ask ourselves what's really going on here, we become an ally for enemies. And that's a powerful spiritual thing. There's a story in the book in which there's a young guy who becomes a widower. And he has 2 little kids at home to take care of. And they've moved to a part of the country where he has no extended family and no support. And he goes to work every day, and everybody just doesn't like him. Because he's cranky all the time, he's mad all the time, fighting all the time, rebuffs everybody all the time. And one of his coworkers decided that he would become an observer. And so he began to observe this guy. And then he began to talk to him, and he said, let's go out and have a beer. Talk to each other. No. Again, I got to go home. Really, why do you have to go home? I got these 2 kids. My wife died. And finally, he was able to pull enough out of him that he began to understand what was really going on, which had nothing to do with anybody in that office. And I invite you, the next time you somebody is just a pill. That's a nice Sunday way of saying it, just a pill. I invite you to ask yourself, what's really going on here? See if you can't become an ally to them, which is what that guy did. He and his wife began to be friends with this guy and help him develop a support system so that he could care for these children and also be alive. So the 2 questions: am I in the flow, and what's really going on here? I hope you read this book. This is the end of the series that I'm going to do on it, but there's still 3 or 4 more chapters, and they're powerful chapters. I talked to Chris. The books are in. Everybody who wants a book can have a book. I hope you'll all get a book. But here's the thing. Don't read the book. Don't read the book. Study the book. See, if you read this book, you're not going to get out of it what you need to get out of it. If you study this book, you can put yourself in a flow that will change your life and the lives of people around you. 2014 for me at CSA is all about this. It's about putting to bed those things that we know about and awakening those things that we know. See, we know a lot about stuff. We know a lot about spiritual principle. 2014, we want to know it. We want to know it so it's a reaction. So it's how we respond to life. Not something we could do if we felt better about ourselves. Get this book. Let's take this into prayer. Knowing that we are in the heart and the mind and the presence of the Most High. That presence that's flowing through Joey right now. That presence that's flowing through Maury right now. That presence that's flowing through Phyllis right now. That presence that is in and around and through us called love and divine wisdom. I simply open up to it. I don't make it difficult. I just take a step back, get off the hamster wheel, sit and open up. I give thanks. I release this word into the law, and together we say, and so it is.